Tiny House Nation is a reality TV series produced by the A&E media giant, in which adherents of the tiny house movement, in the show mostly singles or couples, apply to have a very small house built for them. Each episode features one specific home being built, usually from the ground up. The construction times and quality vary throughout the show, but most of the episodes show the majority of the building process. The show started airing in 2014 on A&E's child network FYI, with episodes per season increasing incrementally until the latest one. The show started with 8 episodes in Season 1 in 2014, 18 episodes in Season 2 in 2015, 22 episodes in Season 3 in 2016, another 22 in 2017, but lastly, only 14 in 2019. The 5th and most current season was aired on A&E instead of FYI. Thus far, its production team has pushed out a total of 84 episodes. Other networks also took a liking to the show after seeing its general success among the public, with Netflix buying the rights to stream it on their platform in 2019, as well as National Geographic starting to air it in 2020. Both of these media giants contributed greatly to the show's popularity, meaning its next seasons will most likely enjoy a much greater audience. The tiny house or small house movement is a social and architectural thought concept that calls for essential minimalism, advocating for the downsizing of average American houses, due to more and more space being required for standard houses in the US. This movement has begun to gain a lot of traction in the recent years, especially with the release of Tiny House Nation. Specifically, the average size of the US home went from approximately 1,780 square feet or 165 square meters in 1978 to almost 2,500 square feet, 232 square meters in 2007, and upwards to 2,662 square feet or 247 square meters as of 2020. This noticeable growth in living quarters outlined the glaring issue of material prices, which just kept rising. And being unable to keep up with the costs, people are opting to live in a small or tiny house. Although they sound the same, small and tiny houses are terms with particular definitions that vary in magnitude. Namely, a small house is a home between 400 and 1,000 square feet, 37 and 93 square meters in total size, whereas a tiny house sprawls across less than the minimum of a small house, sometimes being even as low as an unthinkable 80 square feet, about 7.5 square meters. This movement was inspired by the building of shotgun shacks, which took place between the 1860s and late 1920s, ending with the Great Depression in the 1930s. These domestic residences were no more than 12 feet, 3.5 meters in length, and were mostly meant to mass accommodate Black Americans after they'd been given the rights to homeownership. Most blue-collar families in the South of the US lived in shotgun shacks, especially in and around New Orleans. Small and tiny houses were properly defined and took off again in the 1970s, when famous artists including Alan Wexler started exploring the idea of choosing a compact space for everyday life. Being cost-effective and since the 1970s also apparently modern and no longer ordinary, tiny houses started slowly making an impact on the market, although they still have a long way to go before they're able to compete with their regular counterparts. The style itself is thought to be inspired by the 19th century naturalist, poet, philosopher, and essayist Henry David Thoreau through his 1854 book entitled Walden. There have also been other works of similar inspiration later on, such as Lloyd Kahn's Shelter from 1973, Lester Walker's Tiny Houses from 1987, and Sarah Susanka's The Not So Big House from 1997, which advocated for the counter-movement of smaller houses, which aided considerably in the eventual rise of the idea among the general public. Finally, the modern pioneer of tiny house culture is Jay Schaefer, who created and lived inside of a 97 square foot, 8.9 square meter house and later drew up the first ever plans for tiny houses on wheels, allowing the home mobility of a trailer combined with the relative comfort of an actual home. He eventually founded the Tumbleweed Tiny House Company in 2002, and later the Four Lights Tiny House Company on the 6th of September 2012, both of which focus on building small or tiny houses. In Tiny House Nation, the compulsory building requirements are much closer to tiny than small houses, with the maximum area allowed being no bigger than 500 square feet or 46 square meters. Lastly, although tiny houses seem cheap at first glance, their prices range between $30,000 and $50,000, with the more luxurious going way beyond their higher average. The main faces of Tiny House Nation are John Weisbarth, Zach Griffin, and David Fox, all three of whom are skilled carpenters and construction specialists with years of experience in home building. Together, they move around the US and create smaller, tiny homes for random people, according to the latter's specifications and preferences, covering a sizable portion of the client's construction costs. Although it's stated in apartmenttherapy.com that Tiny House Nation misrepresents the construction time of tiny houses, which sometimes takes up to 6 months, the show itself does show the genuine construction time without false narratives. For example, Zach Griffin built his own tiny home years before joining the show, and has plenty of experience with crafting them. With John and David and many other cast members, he's able to execute complicated constructions of highly customized small and tiny homes in approximately 2 weeks. The 9 episodes of the first season took a total of 8 months to plan and then film, though most of that time was spent on moving around the US for each separate construction and planning its execution. Some houses were finished in just a few days. The crew actually numbers in the hundreds, though the 3 aforementioned men are the stars of the show. This means that even though they do most of the work themselves, they have a lot of helping hands on the set, such as extras who carry the materials and organize the tools, as well as clean the area regularly. By the end of the first season, the houses were being constructed in about 10 days, though this took a toll on Zach and the other 2. He would often have to stay up way longer and get an average of 3 hours of sleep during filming days just to keep up with the schedule. This had to be done in order to maintain the show's popularity, as one main selling point was the speed at which the homes were being created. However, fatigue caught up with the crew by season 2, and they weren't going to repeat the same sleepless process. Hence, the 18 homes built during its runtime were mostly finished in 8 days, but this came at a cost. Certain shortcuts were being taken, the builds were being compromised, and not every part of the construction process was clearly shown. Inevitably, this made the show feel less original, but still maintained the wow factor thanks to the construction speed presented. Zach, the main builder, had to step away from the framing and building processes in order to focus on another aspect of the show, which definitely impacted customer satisfaction in the long run, due to the lack of quality. But the crew still made sure that each project was completed on time, so as not to leave their customers disgruntled. In Season 3, this schedule was sped up even more, at which point a good amount of work had already been done on the house by the time the filming started. Although this left much more to be desired by the audience, the houses were of much higher quality thanks to the intensity of work being lowered. Zach then had to pull only 1 all-nighter per build, instead of the usual many, which allowed him to have much sharper focus. By Season 5, the show had evolved into much more focused and original builds, working exclusively with professional tiny house builders and clients who delivered highly creative ideas and tangibly unique design specifications. This jump in originality helped the show do much better on television, gaining a greater interest in the audience. At their best, the crew were building entire smaller tiny houses in approximately 5 days. Even though the 6th season is yet to come out, Tiny House Nation is still listed as one of the ongoing shows of A&E's website, and there's been no official statement from the company about the show's ending. This means that the next season has either been delayed, or A&E's admission is greatly overdue. In either case, fans have a possibility of anticipation. Due to numerous cases of controversy, however, many of the fans thought that the show was indeed cancelled, after a few lawsuits and public scandals. While this may have indeed slowed down the production, there's been no official comment from the production team about the impact these dramas may have had on the show. One such example is the case of Richard's family of 4, whose Ben and Rebecca moved out of Los Angeles so as to settle in a custom tiny house in Nashville with their 2 children. They ultimately ran into Mike Betzel, who owns the Tennessee-based Tiny House Chattanooga construction company. They made a deal with him after he explained that his houses are built out of non-toxic materials, even including wall installations. He presented them with the idea of being featured in Tiny House Nation and having some of their construction costs covered by A&E. They gladly accepted and were looking forward to their new home, but everything soon went downhill. It first turned out that Betzel didn't allow the couple to have the trailer that holds the house be bought by the show's producers, meaning they had to take the cash out of their own pocket, which really isn't standard procedure in Tiny House Nation. The couple did buy the trailer, and after Betzel received over $47,000 in home construction materials from the production team of the show, He refused to tell the couple the final cost of the build. They later found out that the materials used in construction weren't actually non-toxic, and the trailer was registered under Betzel's name, not theirs. Betzel eventually ceased communication with the couple completely in early 2019, after a list of more than 70 items remained to be addressed. Later on, it turned out that Betzel was being evicted from his property, and since the trailer that their tiny home was on still belonged to him, the judge ruled that the Richards family would have to vacate the premises. As a result, they remained homeless after actually paying for their house. While this isn't the direct fault of the Tiny House Nation production team, it's still great controversy related to the show, and has done the opposite of contributing to its popularity. Some believe that the show is over due to too many scandals, though this isn't the case. While John Weisbarth and David Fox generally disappeared out of the spotlight since season 5 of the show, Zach Griffin has remained fully in the industry, more dedicated than ever to building as many tiny houses as he can. He recently started a highly rated national nonprofit organization with the aim of helping people obtain a reliable and comfortable home who would otherwise end up on the street or living in dreadful conditions. This organization is called Operation Tiny Home and focuses mostly on providing housing for U.S. military veterans. He still creates most of these houses himself as of September 2022, and is poised to be welcomed back to the big screen at any time.
Thank you for spending some time with us. Make sure to like and subscribe so you never miss another video. We also handpick these videos, which we recommend you watch next. You can talk to us on all social medias or ask a question in the comments below. Thank you for being with us, and we'll see you back tomorrow.